So today I'm working in my mini circle art journal, and I'm going to begin by gluing down some old tissue wrap that I've had in my stash for ages, so long that I can't remember where it's from. I'm going to glue it down with the matte medium from Podge. Once I'm happy it's all nicely stuck down and sealed, I'm just going to grab my heat gun and give it a quick blast once over to make sure it's all dry before moving on. So next I'm going to be adding some of this mulberry paper fragment which I received in a happy mail from Caroline Hofstede. I'm just going to tear it up into little fragments and then glue it down using the same matte medium as before. So next I'm going to grab another sheet of paper, again from Happy Mail. This time it's a vintage photo sheet that was sent to me by Minka Buyis, and I'm going to tear that into strips as well and add that to my page. I'll also add a few more fragments of that mulberry paper as well. And when I'm happy with all the fragments on the page, I'm going to grab my heat gun and just give it a once over to make sure it's all nice and dry before I start adding in any paint. My first colour I'm adding today is the Antique Linen Distress Paints from Tim Holtz and Ranger, and I'm just going to add some of the paint onto the page, and as you can see I didn't check to make sure that it was fully secure, so it all started leaking down the sides of the bottle. So I'm going to grab a baby wipe and just start blending that paint across the page, and then I'm going to add some more just to increase the depth of the paint. Of course, I still haven't fixed that leaky bottle, so it all just came streaming out into a great big puddle on my page. But it's not a problem, because all I'm going to do is just wipe it all over the page. So I'm going to leave that to dry for a few minutes while I go make myself a cuppa, and then when I'm back it's time to add some vintage photo distress paint around the edges. So my vintage photo distress paint is very old now and it's almost gone, so I may have to just open the lid up a bit later on and actually just pour some of the contents onto the page to add a bit more depth to it. So I'm not getting much of that vintage photo out of the bottle now, so I'm going to put it to one side and instead add my next colour, which is going to be the Rusty Hinge Distress Paint. Now that I've got some of the Rusty Hinge paint down on the page, I can bring back that vintage photo and just take the last few dregs out of the bottle and just drop those onto the page in a few droplets here and there, and then I can blend those in with that same baby wipe. So I've had a few comments in the past about how I blend using the baby wipe. Well, really, it's nothing with any great precision or any great plan. I just dab and wipe until I'm happy with the colour as it's on the page. There's no great science to it. It's just a case of just keep at it until you're happy. So now that layer is dry, I'm bringing back the antique linen. This time I have made sure that it's all screwed down properly, and I'm using the raised stencil again from Holtz, and I'm just going to add a little bit of the antique linen back through this stencil just to try and lighten up the background a little bit more and just add a little bit more texture and a little bit more interest to it. So happy with the stenciling, so I'm just going to grab the heat gun and give it a quick once over, again just to make sure it's dry before I add on my next colour. Drying between layers is a really good practice and a great habit to get into, because you know when you start adding on your colour that everything's going to be dry before you even begin. So for the next layer I'm going a little bit darker with the Sepia Archival ink from Ranger, and I'm going to bring out my Typo stencil again from Holtz for Stampers Anonymous. I'm just going to add a little bit of that text into the background of the page. So I'm happy with that detail, I'm happy with the stenciling, so now it's time for me to bring out my main focal point, which is a photograph that's recently been sent to me in Happy Mail from Alison Roots. This is a photograph of Alison's grandpa and his dog. I love this photograph because he reminds me so much of my grandfather. So as you can see, I'm just going to cut out the top half of the photograph. And now I'm going to glue it down on my page just using the multi-purpose glue from Collell. Now that I'm happy that the glue has grabbed and that photograph isn't going to go anywhere, I can bring out my scissors and I can start trimming off all the excess tissue paper and pieces of paper from the edge of my art journal page. Now all the excess tissue is gone, I can bring in my dot fade stencil, again from Holtz, and I'm using the same Sepia Archival ink, and now I can just blend out some of those edges and just try and integrate the photograph of Grandpa into the actual page by just overlaying some of the ink and some of that pattern on the photograph as well. So to add a little bit of shadow and a little bit of detail just around the cutout photograph, I'm using the Faber-Castell Caput Mortuum Artist Pick Pen. I'm just going to add a little bit to the edge and then blend it out with my finger. Now these pens are India ink, which means that they are very, very blendable when they're still wet, but once they're dry, they are permanent. So I'm happy with that little bit of shadow around the cutout on the photograph, so it's time to add my main quote, my phrase for my art journal page, and for this I'm using my LetraTag label maker from Dymo. And now that my word blocks are down, I can bring back that artist Pick Pen from Faber-Castell and just add a little bit of a border around those word blocks. So I'm really happy with the way this page has turned out. I really love the warm kind of autumn colours in the background, but also a vintage feel to it as well. So very happy with it. So I've just signed and dated it, and then I'm calling this page complete. So I really hope you've enjoyed watching this art journal page come together. If you have, please remember to give it a thumbs up, share the video with all your friends, and if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel already, you can do so by clicking the button at the end of the video. That's all from me for now. I will see you all again real soon. Bye for now.